Number 3. Monster Hunter can have gripping stories. That was what Gore Magala set out to prove, and by God, he succeeded. The flagship of Monster Hunter 4, Gore Magala stands as one of the most revered beasts ever created in this franchise. Yes, this list comprises almost exclusively of the most popular Monster Hunter monsters of all time, but Gore Magala is different. Quick little aside, I am a fan of Godzilla movies, and something you'll see said about these movies is, these movies don't need to have complex characters, or deep themes, or well-written stories. We're here to watch monsters fight. And I love watching the monsters fight. That is predominantly why I watch those movies. And I love fighting the monsters in Monster Hunter. That is predominantly why I play these games. But the best Godzilla movies have something to say, a well-structured plot, and humans you care about to ground the story in reality. Gore Magala had that effect on Monster Hunter for a lot of us. Now, before Monster Hunter 4, the games had serviceable plots, cool world building, and fun, lovable side characters, and their own themes regarding respect for nature and the power of men against the malevolence of the world. These weren't vapid games, no, but I think 4 really dared to be bolder, dared to have Monster Hunter delve more into the characters, into making civilizations and governments and towns feel like they were alive and breathing and functioning in real time, into expressing themes and having something to say, into allowing characters to have their own moments of development. And the ripple effects of this boldness have been huge. Yeah, sure, sometimes the result of this can be cringe dialogue, sometimes the result can be very underdeveloped aspects of world building and underdeveloped characters. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes the result is a harrowing story of a ragtag found family of misfits and weirdos teaming up with a group of renowned heroes to slay a plague-spreading, frenzy-inciting doom dragon that threatens to annihilate entire ecosystems. Gore Magala is terrifying. A blind, wandering shadow spreading a miasma of death and chaos wherever he goes. He passively guides vast swaths of monsters into murderous rampages and feeds upon the corpses in the aftermath as he builds towards an even grander form. Gore Magala created massive stakes. From his very wings wafts into the air dust-like scales carrying a debilitating illness. Those who succumb keel over only to rise again as a blood-crazed, frenzied monster, ripping apart anything and anyone it can until it dies of exhaustion, continuing to spread the frenzied plague in his wake, threatening to create more frenzied monsters, and then more, all leaving behind a buffet for the Gore Magala. One singular gore is a nightmare scenario. Monster Hunter 4 had a sense of tension and dread behind its adventurous, world-trotting spirit. It's a bright, colorful game with tons of really fun characters and places to travel to, but once Gore arrives, the game takes him seriously, understands the gravity of his presence, and treats him as the terror he is supposed to be. Man, does he arrive with a bang. In an awesome surprise mission, he ambushes you whilst you're sailing in the middle of the ocean on a dark and cloudy night. Unprompted, unexpected, and before the frenzy even enters the picture, this thing fights you on the deck of your ship only to be driven off. He reappears again during an exfiltration mission, defeating the other hunters you've been working with single-handedly, and damn near killing them. He is poised to strike them down while they're trying to evacuate their wounded. However, you then intervene and manage to repel him once more. You then track Gore Magala down to destroy him once and for all, and you are convinced you completed the job, but you should have checked the body. Now, combat and design-wise, this guy does not factor in Gore Magala's placement on this list, but it is impossible to talk about Gore Magala and his impact on Monster Hunter 4 without discussing his fully evolved form. You repel Gore Magala twice, and then knock him down so hard that you could have sworn he died. You have been a thorn in his side this entire time, refusing to die and refusing to let him continue his grim life cycle. But he got just enough power and transforms. His metamorphosis giving birth to an elder dragon of cataclysmic legend, an angel of horror, and a master of the frenzy virus. The fully formed Shagaru Magala stares you down, determined to settle this once and for all. Velkhana defeating you and singling out Celiana made her feel a bit more personal as a threat, and like a really good rival monster, but she lacks the finality of Gore. It begins and ends with him. And this final duel is exemplary. Putting an end to this living, breathing, biological weapon is cathartic. The victory is grand, and this ranks amongst the most climactic duels that the series has to offer. Hell, Gore Magala is so impactful, so abundant in presence and danger, that he stole another monster's game. In the expansion, for Ultimate, the whole reason Soregios is the flagship of that game is because a swarm of them have migrated from their homeland to the region where Monster Hunter 4 takes place, and they've become a troublesome invasive species. Why? Because one of their kind contracted Gore Magala's frenzy virus, overcame the mindless bloodlust effects of said virus, and became a super powerful, frenzied apex monster. He then drove out his entire species from their homeland, and said frenzied apex monsters are now the endgame loop of For Ultimate. Even in death, Gore Magala is so effective, so powerful, that he took over the plot of another Flagships game. His fantastic ecology and story creating ability has, however, been a double-edged sword, though admittedly the worst edge is considerably duller, with Gore Magala being so pertinent to his own game. Whenever he reappears, he kinda can't be as impactful as he should be for the sake of fairness to the monsters who are the stars of this new game. He's shown up in Generations and in Sunbreak with no greater frenzy mechanic or storyline around him. Perfectly fine, I would rather have him than not have him, but knowing what he can do, how impactful he can be, how dangerous his passive presence is, it's a bit weird that he's just there and not affecting anything. It's a minor gripe, but it has served to make him a little less special, but that's kinda Gore's only major problem. He's a bit too special for his own good. That, and I think the fight is quite good, but not necessarily anything to write home about. The frenzy status he gives is pretty neat, mandating that you land a certain number of attacks before a bar fills up. Passing this hit check gives you an affinity boost, and failing means you lose your passive healing for a period of time. I really like that mechanic. Some unorthodox animations, his frenzy attacks look really sick, and he doesn't really have anything cheap or annoying. It's just that his fight is maybe the third or fourth things that comes to mind when I think about him. Gore's aesthetics, though, now that's good. I love the Dark Lord look, the hunched over low posture with his wings wrapped up over his back and trailing behind him, flowing like a cape as he walks. And when you learn that those wings are fully articulated arms with opposable digits ending in razor-sharp claws, he becomes increasingly freaky. And when he gets fully livid, unfurling his wings completely and revealing his two neon purple glowing feeler horns, as he fills the air with so much of his frenzy scales that it weakens the light of the sun itself in this area, it's a moment that never gets old. He goes from decrepit and creepy to a dark lord of death. And oh man, the effects on his wings now in Sunbreak, where they look all torn and frayed at the end while little bits of scales break off like flickering black flames, it is super cool. I just wish Sunbreak had better texture so it looked a little better, but conceptually it's amazing. And then when you realize that he's completely blind the entire time, and he's been fighting you using a connection with his frenzy scales to sense your movements, everything about this guy is so sick. And the designs for his weapons and armor and musical themes, those are all fantastic too. Oh, and let's not forget, he pioneered this entire new body structure for the Elder Dragons. The Magalas, the Jivas, Nergigante, Volstrax, Shar Ishvalda, Gogmazios, back to back to back to back. Amazing Elder Dragons, all made possible by Gore Magala's innovation on the body type. It's partially why he's labeled as a triple question mark instead of as an Elder Dragon. When he showed up, no one had any idea what on earth they were looking at. Gore Magala is one of a kind. So good within his own game that he stole the show from an entire other monster and feels a little out of place when he's not the star of the entire show. Gore Magala is one of the greatest and darkest foes that Monster Hunter has ever faced. He helped change Monster Hunter forever, making true villains and better antagonists out of our flagships and final bosses, drawing more characterization out of our allies, and giving Monster Hunter more of a voice. Utilization of his ecology mythology created context for 4 Ultimate's endgame, and added a narrative depth to the title's cumulative gameplay loop. Not everything that has resulted from this change is great, but a lot of good has come from it. I think Iceborne and Sunbreak have legitimately decent stories, and Gore Magala carved that path. To bring storytelling more into the forefront within Monster Hunter was a bit of a shot in the dark, but darkness just so happens to be where Gore Magala thrives.